Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Hello and welcome everybody to this nice Sunday edition of the Banyan Books Branches of Wisdom live streaming event and podcast. My name is Ross McKeechee and I'm very excited about our two guests today, Jackie Morris and Nick Bantock. Before we begin, Banyan Books acknowledges that although we have people joining from all over the world for these live streaming events, the physical location of Banyan Books and Sound is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Most of Banyan's podcasts and event series are free. We welcome your donations to keep these programs accessible for all. Just click on the PayPal link in the show description below. Also, towards the end of our conversation today, we're going to take questions from you, our live audience, for Jackie Morris and Nick Bantock. So go ahead and type those in on YouTube and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Our two guests today, this is a really exciting conversation. Jackie Morris is an internationally renowned illustrator and author who grew up in England and studied at Hereford College of Arts and at Bath Academy. Her work has been translated into over 14 languages and adapted for stage and film. She was recently nominated for the IBBY 2024 Hans Christian Andersen Award, the highest international recognition given to creators of children's books whose complete works have made an important, lasting contribution to children's literature. She has illustrated for The New Statesman, The Independent, and The Guardian, and collaborated with the late renowned poet Ted Hughes. She has written and illustrated over 40 books, including beloved classics such as The Snow Leopard, The Ice Bear, Tell Me a Dragon, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, The Wild Swans, and The Lost Spells. Today we will be discussing two of her books, Song of the Golden Hare and The Lost Words. For The Lost Words, she won the CILIP Kate Greenaway Medal, the highest honor in children's book illustration. And her website is jackiemorris.co.uk. Nick Bantock was schooled in England and has a BA in fine art in painting. He's authored 30 books, 11 of which have appeared on the bestseller lists, including 3 books on the New York Times top 10 at one time. The best-selling Griffin and Sabine stayed on that list for over 2 years. His works have been translated into 13 languages and over 5 million have been sold worldwide. He was once named by the classic magazine Weird Tales as one of the best 85 storytellers of the century. He has written articles and stories for numerous international newspapers and magazines. His paintings, drawings, sculptures, collages, and prints have been exhibited in shows in UK, France, and North America. He has a lifetime BAFTA for Ceremony of Innocence, which is a CD-ROM collaboration with Peter Gabriel's Real World. For 20 years, he's spoken and read to audiences throughout North America, Europe, and Australia. And today we will be discussing Nick Bantock's books, The Corset and the Jellyfish, and the now iconic Griffin and Sabine series, as well as his surrealist card deck, The River, Sailing the Stream of Consciousness. To learn more about Nick Bantock, visit his website, nickbantock.com. A very warm welcome from the Banyan community for Jackie Morris and Nick Bantock.
Hi.
Hi, it's lovely to be here.
Hello, thanks. It's really lovely to have both of you. Jackie, I read that you knew you wanted to be an artist from the age of 6. I'm curious to know from both of you kind of your origin story around becoming an artist. So maybe I'll start with you, Jackie. How did you know at 6 that you wanted to be an artist?
I do remember as a child walking into what was the posh room in our house. My dad was a policeman. We lived in a very small house, and he was sat at a table and he was kind of hunched over and doing something. And I must have been quite short because I was resting my chin on my hands, leaning against the table, and I was watching him draw a bird. So he was making a bird appear on a piece of paper using a pencil. And I didn't think to myself, when I'm grown up, I want to be able to do that. I want to be an artist. What I wanted was to be able to draw. I wanted to have that magic. I wanted to make a bird alight on a piece of paper. And I didn't know there was a word for artist, because you don't when you're young. You just draw, don't you? Most people draw when they're young. Some people stop. And other people, like myself and Nick, just carry on. So that's really then all I was interested in. I just wanted to do colouring in. And much later, I found my way into drawing words because all my books are handwritten. So I write everything out in longhand, which is just another form of drawing. And I love pencils. I'm a proper pencil geek. Really like it. Yeah.
How about you, Nick? Are you a pencil geek too?
Oh, yeah. I remember I just started at art college. I'd been there for about 3 months and, sitting in the life room most days and just, not being able to get anything right, the proportion not really working. And then we had a break for a week and I came back and I sat down and I picked up the pencil and it just felt different in my hand. It was weird. It was almost like it had become an extension of my fingers. And I remember reaching out to the paper and instead of instructing my hand and telling it what to do, my hand, as it were, did it on its own. So what was coming in through my eyes wasn't having to filter through my brain, but was going directly down my arm to my hand. That may sound a little odd, but the reality was that as you start to make a mark, you know at what point to change, what to loosen, what to strengthen, what direction to go. You start to feel it. And that was when I realized not only was I complete when I had a pencil in my hand, but that I'd found home.
You both attended art school,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious. Do you feel that that's necessary to become a professional artist? How did that impact your formation as an artist?
I think it probably gets in the way.
Yeah. I was told many times that I would never make it as an illustrator and they were going to kick me out, which wasn't helpful, really. I can't say I enjoyed it. But I think things have changed now in the way students are spoken to, I hope. But at the time, I found it quite soul destroying, really. Yeah.
I think probably slightly different. I think the sort of the whole Nietzsche thing of what doesn't kill you makes you strong.
Yeah.
I think the art college experience like that. I was very lucky the first 2 years because I studied at art college when I was 16. because I was booted out of secondary modern school. And after those first 2 years, I then went on to the DPD college, and then it started to get messy because that was around the time of the Hornsby rebellions and all that stuff. And I didn't really know why I was there. And I think it wasn't until after I'd finished, sort of being at art college for 5 years, that I started to find my own feet. And it was that engagement with the world. And I was lucky enough to end up doing book covers. And I think it was doing book covers was my freedom in a weird sort of way to have reason to paint in a way that I wanted to paint. I mean, this was at a time when in the fine art department, people were using masking tape and using flat acrylic paint. And the idea that you could actually draw was some kind of recrimination. But when you, obviously, the figurative ability that you have and all of those things that you learn when you do book covers, that then has purpose.
Yeah, I was, when I first left college, I worked mostly for newspapers, and I did book jackets as well. And I was so hungry, partly because I had no money. I just went for everything and took every opportunity that I could get. But I was really lucky in the work that I was offered. I do remember phoning up a publisher once called Gay Men's Press, and they said, "Are you a gay man?" And I said, "No." It's like, but there was positive discrimination, and that is good. But I didn't get that job. I was sad about that. But there were so many beautiful covers coming out. It was a quick turnaround. Sometimes I got a job on a Friday, and I had to have it done by a Monday, and that was really good.
Wow.
But I always hated everything I did. I felt that thing where you're trying to get things out of your fingers. All my work got stuck at my elbow. And it never came out like what I wanted it to. It took me years to learn. Sometimes it doesn't come out as you want it to. It comes out as it wants to.
Yeah.
And you need to back off and squint at it, or look at it in a mirror, or go outside and sneak up on it through a window. And
yeah, I think our egos tend to make us to want to be in control. But the reality is, as the years go by, you learn you are a servant to the piece. Yeah. Once it's started, it's a bit like grabbing on a tiger's tail and hanging.
Yeah.
And the more you learn to listen to what it needs, the better it is. Yeah. And by the time you come to the end of it, there's a tendency to sit back and go, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
It's you can't own it.
Yes. And I think it is about ego. It is like, you have to let it go and just let it be itself. And, it has taken me years to learn that. I wish somebody had said that to me much earlier. The way that I kind of learned was I went to an exhibition by a lady called Evelyn Williams. And at the time, I just hated everything that I did, but I needed to send it to publishers because I needed to be paid. And I went to this exhibition, and in the catalogue, this woman who I thought was very old, she was very poised, and she looked like an old version of Degas' dancer with a long grey plait down her back, and she was so elegant. And her work was sublime. But in her catalogue, she said she hated everything that she did, but she loved doing it. And I thought, yeah, that's it. That's just, okay, so if she feels like that, then I should just give up hope of like enjoying the finished thing, but I really enjoy making everything.
Yeah.
So that's where my focus is now. Loving painting, loving moving color around. Now I'm learning, I really, ever since I was at college, I've wanted to do stone letter cutting, which I call slow writing these days. So one chisel chip at a time. And I love that the piece that comes into the brain when you're just lost in creativity. But I also love reading. And I was going to ask you, Nick, what was the last really brilliant book that you read?
Oh, blimey. Brilliant is a tough. I read, do you know the Sanson series about the Henry VIII, the period of Henry VIII, and running through his wives, and the main character is a hunchback lawyer, and they're so meaty, and they're so and I was never sort of that interested in history at school, but I've found that having been forced to when I was back doing book covers, I was forced to read a lot of stuff I wouldn't have normally read, and that sort of made my my reading a lot broader. And I've started to find that my curiosity for history grew because I can absorb history way better in a fiction form than I can as a sort of hard-coded academia.
Yeah. And I've kind of realized that in the same way that every painting you do, every drawing you do, you're still learning how to do it. I'm so learning how to read these days.
Yeah.
And it's really changed. I've just reread The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey.
Right.
I don't think I've ever cried so much when I've been reading a book. It was just absolute bliss. And in between all her books, I've been reading your books, and that has been an utter joy. I love beautiful pictures. I love letters. I love postcards. So it's so like peering into somebody else's life, reading the correspondence of others.
It's an interesting point you make about going back, because I do like reading something a book that was very influential when I was young. And then I just recently reread Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness.
Oh, nice.
It was stunning, but I read it so differently to the way I read it when I was young.
Yeah. So did you read her Wizard of Earthsea as well?
I did, about a gazillion years ago.
Yeah, because I didn't find that until I was in my late 20s, and just loved that. I love a bit of fantasy fiction anyway. I get sent lots and lots of nature writing books for doing endorsements and things. And I don't do endorsements anyway, but what I really want is fantasy fiction. Just putting that out there. I do love a dragon.
I used to, when I was doing book covers, my one-time agent had me start to work under an alias. I worked under Nick Fox because she reckoned that art directors tend not to like illustrators to have too much breadth. So you need different names to do different kinds of things. And so I did a whole series of science fiction stuff over the years. But it was science fiction, I think, that really, I remember the very first book that I ever read that made my mouth drop open. And it was a series of short stories by Arthur C. Clarke. And there was one called The 9 Billion Names of God. And it was a very short story, but I just remember coming to the end of it and my jaw just dropped. And I think it was at that point that I started to get a sense of the possibility, because it spilled over. I was reading it, but it also spilled over into the possibility of creative, imaginative thinking within art.
Yeah.
So it almost took off in two directions.
Yeah. So Ross.
Yes.
What's the best book that you've read recently?
That's actually easy for me. I interviewed her a couple of months ago on here, and it's Held by Jacob helped me out here, and she just won the Giller Prize for it. Anne Michaels. Yeah.
Oh,
And
right.
it
Yeah.
was, speaking of crying, I cried a lot when I read that book, and it was just so beautiful. It's very short little poetic snippets that takes you through this story, and it's very like a dreamscape, and this kind of in-between world between the living and the dead and the dying and memory and present and future. It all kind of melds together. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you both about imagination. And Nick, I know your cards, the river deck, they're designed to really help us tap into the subconscious and creative imagination.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your process for you also have that book, The Trickster's Hat, where you're giving different practices and processes for tapping into creativity. What are your tricks? How do you unblock yourself? How do you tap in?
Well, the cards, doing the cards started with an archeo deck, which was 40 archetypes. And way back when I started to work on Griffin and Sabine, I started to realize that there was an internal dialogue between these two characters. It was very much my dialogue, my left side, my right side, my intuition, my my logical side. And once I'd worked that out, that there were two, then I started to realize there was a whole village inside me of multiple characters. And the interesting thing is that once you actually tap into those voices within yourself and even the behavior patterns, you start to realize that you can go to whichever archetype is most appropriate in the situation you're in. And it's almost like having a sort of a whole village available to you. So the first deck was to try and help people understand that by using these characters, these internal characters, you could develop your personal mythology. When it came to the river, I wanted to create a landscape that actually functioned in. And so the river is when we first started to function, we functioned in terms of our day life and our dream life were the same thing. It was all image based. And then as the sort of patriarchal society sort of took grip and words became a method of control and communication, so our trust in imagery became more and more suppressed. It was almost as though the word masculine side feared the female intuitive imagery side. So what I tried to do in the river is to try and encourage people to trust their image thinking. And so instead of do what we've been taught to do, which is you have an image and you translate it into words, and then you come back to it, to move as the same way as you do in your dream world, where image moves to image moves to image in an exponential way. Once you actually start to trust this internal landscape, this personal mythology of images, you find it easier and easier to actually make those sort of quantum leap jumps that help get you through life's decisions. There's a great quote by Hillman. He said, the brain's a great thing for helping you get on the right bus, but don't use it for life decisions. So what I'm saying is that if we trust our sense of imagery more, we will make better and more cohesive decisions rather than if we always have to revert to word language communication direct.
Jackie,
that makes sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. And oh, sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
No, I was going to just add to that by reading from The Unwinding, which is a book that I wrote and illustrated. And this is from a passage called The Dreams of the White Bear. When they spoke, the bear and the woman, it was often in questions. What are the shape of your dreams? She asked him. What do you mean? He replied. Many things in one question. What is the language of your dreams? And when you dream, do you dream in words, images? And when you dream, are your dreams color, black and white, or colors known only to dreamers? Are they visions or something else? He asked. Something else? Are they chemical, scent, touch? What shape do your dreams take? Do they have a narrative or are they abstract? He closed his eyes, became lost in thought, and for a while there was silence but for the sound of birds, the soft breath of hares, the stir of winter leaves. Later, as the moon rose and tangled in the winter-born branches of thorn trees, she asked, Can you guide your dreaming? Can you move your dreams along pathways of desire? Do your dreams shift in the spaces between dreaming and waking? And when you wake, do you remember the pathways your dreaming mind has walked? Or do your dreams dissolve in the light of each new day? She could not tell now if he was asleep or awake, if her words were a lullaby, and still she had more questions. Do you dream when you're awake? Do you imagine in words, in images? Do you wonder the pathways of what might have been, what might yet be, and all that you might become? What is the shape of your imagination? Are dreams important to you, part of the pattern of your soul? Why do you wish to know? He replied. And for a long time she searched her heart for an answer. To better understand the geography of my heart, how it fits with the pattern of yours, she said. And there's a picture at the end, which is that one. And I wrote that because I wanted the answers to all those questions.
It reminds me, Nick, you have questions. That's really beautiful, Jackie. And I want to ask both of you about how you work with your dreams. I also just want to mention that Nick, at the end of the guidebook for the river cards, he lists these 60 questions. Things like the wounded heart, why does it take so long to heal? Or is there order or chaos at the center of existence? Just these questions. Why do we long for the miraculous? So that series of questions that you presented, Jackie, it really seems along the lines of what Nick was doing with his 60 questions.
Well, I think the weird thing is how little we actually get asked those kind of questions as we pass through school and our day-to-day being, where we're so distracted by the mundane that it's almost become unfashionable to question one's existence. And so there again, by putting in these 60 questions, I was just trying to provoke and give suggestions for the way people might dive into themselves to actually find out more about what their relationship is with the totality.
Why is it that when, like, if you hurt your arm and you remember that, you don't feel that hurt again? But if you hurt your heart, you feel it every time you remember.
Yeah. That's true.
That's a good point.
I was just going to follow on from Jackie's nice read. Nice read. I was going to read something from the Corset and the Jellyfish. Which is a series of it's 100 100-word stories. A drabble is a 100-word story, and I started to write drabbles because I got sick to death of people sending me emails and texts that made no sense or were totally ambiguous. And I thought, sod this. I'm going to actually try and do something that helps make language exact again. So I started writing these 100 words. They're very difficult, writing a 100-word story. It's to get, but it's really exciting, because if you sort of, so you write it out and you've got about 140 words, and you trim it down, and then you suddenly realize you've got 98. So you've got two spare words. That is really something. Anyway, so not only is this one of the drabbles from the Corset and the Jellyfish, but in some ways it also refers to that dream world we were just talking about, and how the imagery within the dream world can be so intense. So this is called the cabinet. He hangs his cabinet of curiosity with precision, suspending it on copper wires held taut between ceiling and floor. Locking the door, he turns down the gas lamp and reaches through the shadowy folds of the cabinet's spiral core. Summoning colors to his fingertips, he spreads burnt orange and purple across the bone black sky, orchestrating a mythology, searching for the flinty sparks and mote worlds that float within the 11 creases of space. Parsec by parsec, he seeds stars into the night. Withdrawing his hand from the vortex, he touches the knuckle to his tongue and tastes the residue of brimstone and petals.
I love that. There's something, isn't there, about I used to get so frustrated on Twitter seeing writers go, "Oh, I've written 3,000 words today," and I used to think, "Oh, I wrote 13, but I crossed 7 of them out." It's that spare, that writing back. What are they called again? 100 words?
Drabbles.
Rabbles.
Drabbles.
Drabbles, not rabbles.
No, drabbles.
Okay.
And you know what? I'll say this. Everyone should practice it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really teaches you to be about language. You know what Orwell said in 1984? Is just like the way they can stop us thinking is to reduce our language to the point where we cannot articulate, and when we cannot articulate, we will not think, and then they can do what they will with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all of our jobs, I feel, to expand our language throughout our life, and also to pause and take time to pick the exact words so that we say what it is we really want to say. And you mentioned the heart, to be able to speak from the heart as well, to allow the heart to articulate itself.
Yeah, and what I try to do with my books is that they should have space in them always for the person reading them to step in with their own creativity. That's what I hope for.
Absolutely.
So that each book that I do is a catalyst. And this went a step further with this book, because about halfway through this one, I had the really good idea that it would make quite a nice decorated notebook if you took out all the words. So I persuaded my publisher, bless them, to do a silent version, like a silent movie that just has the images, and people can then draw the pictures out more if they want, or write their own stories as a response, because every image has its own story held in the pigment, and every person looking at it will see it differently, and every story will be different. And that's always what I hope for. This image that's on the screen now, this was from the Song of the Golden Hare, and a very lovely lady called Audrey actually made me this quilt in patchwork, which is beautiful. But it's very much leans on a painting by, is it Egon Schiele, of a brother and sister sleeping? I don't know. I think it's Schiele. Yeah, I do like a hare. I've got a great soft spot for hares.
I was going to say that when reading the Song of the Golden Hare, that's the book that image comes from. It seemed to me like you do have a real relationship with them. I could feel that coming through.
I do. Well, everything non-human or wild. I particularly love birds, and I love how when you see a bird in the wild, when you see a hare, if you're fortunate enough, it somehow time slows. Sometimes it can come to a standstill, but it always feels like a gift. I live in a very remote kind of wild place. So every year seals come to breed on the beaches. And this year, for the first time in 10 years, I could actually get down to the cliffs to actually see the seals and their pups and hear them again after 9 years of not being able to. Because I struggle with arthritis, but I have half a new knee now. So I'm like a bionic woman, and I can get to places that I used to get to. Yeah.
And I think Nick had some nice kingfisher image. That was one of the nice connections we discovered, was this kingfisher connection. There's a lovely one. Yeah, look at this.
I love that.
And which book is this one from, Nick?
Yeah, don't ask me those questions. They all merge together.
I know it's the cover of the second of the middle Griffin and Sabine book, because I read it this afternoon. So I did threaten to, if the conversation got dull today, I have got the last one to read, which I'm going to read after the event, not during it. At the moment.
Delighted, thank you. So far, I think we've probably managed to stop people falling asleep, but we can yet do it.
I'm curious to know. There's another kingfisher image, and that's from The Lost Words. This beautiful book. There it is. Can you tell us a bit about the inspiration for this book, the story about the Oxford Dictionary?
Yeah, we weren't supposed to talk about it when the book first came out for reasons I won't go into. But in 2007, the Oxford Junior Dictionary dropped a group of words from its main dictionary that went into schools. And these words were very much words connected to the natural world, like bluebell, adder, conker, kids and conkers. Come on now. Kingfisher was one of them. And that was picked up very publicly by Robert Macfarlane in a book called Landmarks, a book about language.
Yeah, I've read it. It's a great book.
Yeah, he's quite a good writer, as I like to say. Yeah, he's all right. I also occasionally say I taught him everything he knows, but his mum says I didn't. I think it might have. Anyway, so I wrote to Rob because I had this idea that it would be an interesting book to just take these words with a gold leaf icon and put the dictionary definition on the other side. And I got a lovely email back from him saying, oh, thanks very much for getting in touch. Good luck with your project. I'm really, really busy. And then about 3 weeks later, because I'm a bit like a burr, a Velcro burr thing that sticks on your clothes. He got in touch and he said, I can't get this idea out of my mind, but I wonder if there's something else we can do. And he said, I don't want to intrude because it's your idea and I know you're right, but would you consider us working in partnership in creating this? And I thought, yeah, well, he can write.
Yeah, right. Fairly competent.
Yeah, he's all right. He knows what he's doing. And so that's where it came from. And right from the start, we wanted it to be a big book. I didn't want any humans in it. The only humans in it are the ones that are holding it. It is massive. It is.
Book.
Yeah.
Next to my head, you can.
A bird hide or a. Rob wrote acrostic poems, which are like spells. So it is like a big book of spells, really, art and poetry. But what is absolutely joyous is it's gone into so many schools in the UK, and the work that the children have created, both in their writing and in their painting, they are just phenomenal. Kids actually sometimes write better than the books that are produced for them. I think because some editors forget what it was like to be a child and how you have that bright, open mind that is just full of excitement, full of interest, full of wonder, full of awe.
And they're not shackled by political correctness either.
No,
In the same way, and it allows them to write with a degree of freedom.
Yeah,
I think so often in the children's book industry, the publishers have become so self-conscious.
Yeah.
They've almost crushed the act of creation.
Yeah, but the ones that when you see the ones that rise, they're absolutely beautiful ones. I mean, I didn't want The Lost Words to be a children's book. I just wanted it to be a book. Because that was the first thing that Rob said, maybe we could do a children's book together. And I said, well, I don't want to do a children's book. I just want to do a book. You know, why can't adults have books with pictures in too? Come on now.
Well, that whole notion of crossovers, I mean, you know, if you think about it, the way it's split, Alice in Wonderland would never get published today.
No way. Yeah. No. And one of my favorite books when I was young was White Fang. Fang and Call of the Wild.
Yep.
That was the first time reading really kind of shook my brain in my skull, and I just absolutely adored both of them. I didn't like, there were many other books. Wind in the Willows is one of my least favorite books, but I love the pictures. I'm always with the weasels. That's my problem. It's like, yeah, not a fan of Mr. Toad, funnily enough. Anyway, moving swiftly on from there.
Have you ever met anyone that looked like Mr. Toad? I did once, and it was really, really difficult to look him in the face.
Well, I could say Boris Johnson.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I had a near miss.
Bleached Toad.
Yeah, and that kind of entitled, bombastic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did do another book as well. We did a much smaller book. So we did The Lost Spells, which is a tiny version. That was our second book, and now the Book of Birds is what I've just finished. Left me slightly broken.
Do you feel like you're slowing down?
Yeah, I do, but I've been learning to become fallow like a field. I had a few months of not really doing much, and then I had to go back, and because there were a few paintings that were missing, so I had to redo them. And in that time that I'd been doing nothing, my painting had got better. So I'm taking that as a really good lesson. More time sitting on the beach, watching the tide come in and go out again, and thinking. I think my problem was right from when I first left college. I only considered myself to be working if I was pushing paint or a pencil round.
Yeah.
And it's taken me this long to work out that the main bit of work is done when I'm dreaming.
Yeah. I think I'm probably these days learning to still have the ideas, but not feeling obliged to necessarily carry them out.
Yeah.
And there's a degree of freedom in that. I think for so many years, I was a bit like a jockey in the last furlong of a race, whipping the horse. Yeah. That's what I was doing to myself. And now it's just, there's a great degree of pleasure I take by going, no, I'm not going to sit down and write and paint. I'm going to go lawn bowling.
Yeah. I'm going to go for a walk up the hill.
Yeah.
I'm going to knit. I'm going to look out the window. I'm going to watch the tide come in and go out.
Speaking of tides, maybe a changing of tide right now. We have some really great audience questions coming in. Is it okay with you both if we tap into some of those?
Absolutely not. No, please go ahead.
Well, that would be a first.
Yeah.
There's one here from Sarah Jane, who I happen to know. She's in Wales. And Sarah Jane says, I'm loving hearing you both talk, so liberating. And then she has a question. How do you view the idea that trauma is necessary for creativity?
I think it's a myth. I think the hardest creativity to produce is beauty. Humans are drawn to darkness, and that is why so many stories that we have are of war. I can't watch television anymore. It's just too full of death. And but to write and to paint something really beautiful is much harder. And I definitely work better inspired by beauty than inspired by trauma. I have had some trauma, but I have also been very fortunate in my life. And, you know, I wouldn't shy away from that. You know, I've never lived in a war zone. Although I'm aware that as a country that I live in, we have been responsible for the degradation of many people, and that doesn't sit well with me.
I wouldn't say by any means that trauma is necessary, and who can avoid trauma anyway? But what I would say is one of the, I did a book called The Forgetting Room at a time, it was set in Ronda in Spain. And it was a time in my life that was really, really difficult, going through a lot of, you know, bad stuff, you know, breakdown marriage, but doing that book gave me a kind of a lifeline, because I needed it so badly. I needed to have something that I could pour the things that really mattered to me in, both in terms of writing and the art. And I kind of feel doing that book saved me. Saved me from just disappearing down a hole. And it sort of Ariadne's string for Theseus to get in and out of the Minotaur's cave. So I know what you're saying about is trauma necessary? It's not necessary, but I think it's what you do with it. It's do you turn it into a fuel that will make your creativity have a power and intensity about it, as opposed to just simply working from a sort of a kind of thin curiosity.
I very much feel these days that that I can use things like The Lost Words was like a howl of rage in a way. But my howls are, you know, I don't go out and protest on the streets. I find crowds really difficult. But my protest and my prayer are both in my paintings. And that's what my work is these days, I think, in as much as I can understand it. I also went through marriage breakdown. It's not nice, is it?
Nah.
That was what I was talking about. You know,
sometimes it's necessary, though.
Yeah. Mine very, good to survive it. Yeah.
Well,
I just wanted to bring in one more thing that came up there, and that's the notion of working slowly as opposed to working frantically. And I now have a very different wife for some 20 years now, who is an artist in herself, Joyce Bantock, and you can see her work on Instagram. She works very slowly. It's an intentional slowness. She's working with papers and folding and small amounts of material and bits of stitching. but I get so much satisfaction from seeing her slow moving process that it's really taught me to not try so hard. I think having others around us who are also practicing and practicing seriously and well, it is an enormous boon.
Yeah.
Well, you've both also touched on Libby's question, which was to do with translating life drama into creative works, either as a distraction or coping mechanism or other. I don't know if you have any more comments on that subject or if you feel we've covered it.
I think that's pretty much what we were just like chewing over. Yeah.
There's a question from another Libby who says, I love the Lost Words / Lost Spells books. The language and illustrations together are magical. How do the words influence the images, or is it the images influencing the language?
Both of the books and also the bird book are very much co-created. So with some of all of the books, the images came first, or the words came first, and then everything balances.
They feed off each other, don't they? I mean, to say one leads makes no sense whatsoever. An image will suggest words, words will suggest images, and it grows like a Catherine wheel, spinning from the middle, outwards, outwards, outwards. That's why I tend to start my books in the middle rather than the front.
But I think it's more unusual when you have two people working. I mean, I did let Rob do a little bit of the gilding for the Book of Birds, but I don't usually let him paint. And I do, sometimes I work on roughs, or sometimes I say I'm going to try this. Right at the end of the bird book, I was just working on the last painting, and it had taken 5 years, and I suddenly had this idea. So I did this little sketch, and then I sent it to him, and I said, look, I've had this idea, but if you go with this, it means I've got to do another 50 paintings. But it's good to work like that together, you know. And I would send him writing, sometimes in emails, sometimes postcards. I wish I'd done that all the way through. But it's kind of different. I also write for other illustrators, and that is a really lovely process, because what I try and do if I'm writing for somebody else is not have images in my head. I need to give them the space to step into. And it's a very different way of thinking.
That's why a lot of the time I would work with a combination of collage and painting, is because I don't like starting with a concept in my head and then trying to reproduce it, which is the way they try and teach you art at school. In my experience, you start making marks, you see what emerges, you respond to that, you build layer upon layer upon layer, and bit by bit the piece takes on its own, not just character and personality, but its sense of self. And then it becomes almost like a table tennis match with the piece, flashing it backwards and forwards. So yeah, I think it's really, really important to allow both sides of your left brain and right brain to have full function in the process, you know, to allow them to become a marriage.
And we just saw some nice images that Jacob put up there. Those are some of the different stamps from the Griffin and Sabine series that you designed, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're so rich, those books. I spent an evening reading the first 3 by the fire in my house, and it was a beautiful experience. It was I just find reading is such a fantastic way to spend time, because of the way the stories go into the brain. in such a different way. What I need to do is go back and look at the images more, because I found myself rushing through the words. I just wanted to get the next envelope open and see. And
well, there are two stories that in a way run not parallel, but they sort of, sometimes the images move ahead and sometimes they drop back. And so there isn't necessarily a direct correlation. Sometimes, yes, between the images on the front of the postcard and on the back of the postcard. And that's intentional. That's to try and stop people literalizing things.
Yeah. It's just such a rich experience. It's wonderful.
That reminds me, I wanted to ask both of you about this, and I'm going to just share a short quote from the first Griffin and Sabine book. In one of the first letters that Griffin writes to Sabine, he says, "Art for art's sake is best quarantined here in the old world. I crave an art that passionately transcends the mundane instead of being a device for self-deception." That was a terrible reading. "I crave an art that passionately transcends the mundane instead of being a device for self-deception." I wanted to lead that into just saying, is that your view, Nick, on art? And I want to find out from both of you, what is the purpose of art for you?
Well, question.
Oh, it's only a 2,000-year challenge.
What's the purpose?
Okay, so I would say that there is an internal dialogue that is part of our process of curiosity. We engage with everything we experience, not just the things immediately in front of us, but trying to push back our whole peripheral vision to try and understand and experience more. And art for me is the vehicle that allows me to do that, to constantly be surprised by, when you working from chaos to order to chaos, backwards and forwards, and out of it emerges some kind of mirror that goes down into the microcosm and out into the macrocosm. It's such an amazing way of seeing and feeling the world at that very moment you're doing it.
Okay, I'm going to try and answer that, but I'm actually going to answer a completely different question. When I was working on the Lost Words, I felt a connection to the lands, to the landscape, to the non-human world, but also to the artists that had gone before me in a way that I hadn't felt before, right back to those who, the work that I still love most, which is the images that were painted onto cave walls, which I think were a summoning, a praise song. Who knows what they were? We can't tell. But for me, that's what they were. And I could feel that connection. It's a connection to a family that is not your biological family. It's your family of practice, all the artists who ever were. And that was quite an amazing thing, really.
Mm. Yeah.
Doesn't quite answer the question, but
yeah. I think what we're talking about is real magic.
Mm. And there is a sense that when it works right, it does feel like witchcraft. Yeah.
It's also interesting the extent to which artists are often put. You have to be reasonably successful first to people to make this jump, and so to move you from being the bullied kid in the playground to being the one that people think know how to do it. And you go from the pulp on the pavement floor to being the witch doctor. And you never really quite know how it happened, but I think it's so much of it is because the vast majority of people are not lucky enough to engage with the muse, to really experience that sort of letting go of creative process. But when they see people that have or can, they stick a hat on them and start calling them things in a positive way. I think that's probably, as artists, that's the greatest gift that we get, is the actual freedom to do it, to just simply be given
carry on
permission.
doing it. Yeah. And there is also that thing where people go, "Oh, you're so talented," which kind of forgets about all the hours and hours and hours, many hours. You don't say to a brain surgeon, "Oh, you're very talented."
I'm still working on 25 cents an hour.
I have to say, it's not about the money, is it?
No, it ain't about the money.
Yeah. But I do have a trick that really freaks people out, which is painting with 2 brushes, 1 in each hand. That feels so lovely inside my brain.
I've done that with chalk pastel. I put up big sheets of paper on the wall and then stood on a chair and started drawing with both arms at the same time. It's amazing. It's like conducting a gigantic orchestra.
Yeah, I can only do it if I mirror things at the moment. But maybe I just need to put a bit more practice into it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we've been having a lot of comments rolling in from the audience. Everybody's loving the comment on magic and feeling the power of that. It seems like that resonates with a lot of people. We're just getting to the end of our time here. I just want to let everybody know we've been speaking to the wonderful, talented, skillful, trained, creative, and infinitely interesting Jackie Morris and Nick Bantock. They both have loads of work that you can check out. You can look at their websites. I'll get Jacob to put them up. It's nickbantock.com. And Jackie,
actually, if I can just say, if you want to see my stuff, it's actually probably the website is old and tired. But if you go to the Etsy store or Instagram, that's where you can go back and you can see a really big library of the work.
Okay, great. Good to know. And you're on Instagram too, aren't you, Jackie?
Yeah, I like Instagram, but at the moment it just looks like I sit by my fire reading books in the dark, actually, because I've got no electricity at home as well. So, but I will be painting again sometime. I've got a couple of touring exhibitions as well in the UK. One, Lost Spells and Lost Words. It's going to be back in the Sill in Northumbria. So just near. Did you hear about the infamous Sycamore Gap, where very iconic tree was cut down by somebody?
No.
Dreadful. Anyway, it's going to be near there. I don't know what else I've got coming up. Can't remember.
But people could find it on your website, jackiemorris.co.uk, if they're interested.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Huge thanks to our audience, and thank you so much to both of you. It's been so wonderful to speak with you today. And
thank you.
I have absolutely loved finding Nick's work. It's been so glorious.
And Jackie, I'm really, as someone who has knows how hard it is to control the materials that you're using, is just very, very impressed by your sensitive skills.
Thank you. I'll be round for a cup of tea later.
Very welcome. It'll only cost you $5.
Yeah. Probably get blown there at the moment.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. The show is edited by Abdo Habani. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.